Hello, Tommy Fagan here. Welcome to my Roots and Revival programme, your trusted guide through the rich tapestry of Irish traditional music recordings from the early 1900s. Each podcast will explore the legendary musicians, landmark recordings, and distinctive styles that have shaped this vibrant tradition. Guest experts will discuss their selection of recordings covering the golden ages of the Roaring Twenties, post-war London, the Ceilidh Band era, the Super 70s, the digital generation, and the traveller tradition. If you're a seasoned player, an avid listener, or just beginning, prepare to embark on this engaging journey through time and tunes. Today's guest is Don Mead. Don is a distinguished musicologist, researcher, and musician whose work has been instrumental in preserving and documenting Irish traditional music in the United States. As an expert in early 20th century Irish musical recordings, Don has made significant contributions to understanding the rich musical heritage brought to America by Irish immigrants. One of his most notable projects is the Wheels of the World compilation, a critically acclaimed collection that explores the depth and breadth of Irish traditional music recordings from the early decades of the 20th century. This work has been pivotal in bringing to light lesser known recordings and providing context for the musical traditions that shaped Irish American musical culture. More recently, Don has curated From the Bridge, Irish Traditional Music in New York from the early 1900s. It is hosted on the Irish Traditional Music Archive. This digital resource offers an extensive look into the musical connections between Ireland and the United States, highlighting the transmission and evolution of traditional music across generations and continents. Through his meticulous research and passionate archival work, Don Mead has become a crucial figure in documenting and celebrating the rich tapestry of Irish traditional music in America. Don, you're very welcome.
Thank you very much, Tommy.
How's things in cold upstate New York at the moment?
Oh, spring is almost upon us.
Good.
I'm trying to be optimistic about it. We had a bad spate of snow and ice there the last week, but things are looking up.
Don, before we get stuck into the details of this fabulous story, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to Irish traditional music in particular?
Sure. My parents are from Boston, both born in America. And they moved to California, where I mostly grew up. And the only connection I had to Irish music as a child was the recordings of the Clancy Brothers and Tommy Makem. And I was particularly attracted to Tommy Makem singing and tin whistle playing. But it wasn't until I moved to New York in the mid-1970s that I encountered actual Irish traditional music and started trying to play it around 1982. There was a place called the Eagle Tavern on 14th Street. It was a famous place for Irish music. They had sessions on Mondays and concerts on Wednesdays, dances on Fridays. So that became my academy of Irish music, and I would plant myself next to Paddy Reynolds, great fiddle player from Longford, Tom Doherty from Mount Charles and Donegal, and other people who would come in to play at the Eagle. And worked my way into actually running the concerts at the Eagle. And when that bar closed down, moving the concert series to the Blarney Star Bar for 10 years in the 1990s. And after that bar closed, went to the nonprofit route.
You're good at closing down bars, Don, yeah?
Yeah. Produced concerts at New York University's Ireland House, and now at the New York Irish Center in Long Island City, Queens. About 30 some years ago, we started up something called the Catskills Irish Arts Week in East Durham, the historic Irish resort town in the Catskills.
I was out there a couple of summers ago. The first time I'd been back, I worked in the Catskills in Leeds for a few summers, and Paddy Reynolds used to frequent the bar with Andy McGann and Johnny Cronin and people like that.
Without recordings, it's hard to know exactly what people sounded like, although we have some hints. The greatest historian and collector of Irish music in America was not based in New York, but in Chicago. That would be, of course, the famous Captain Francis O'Neill. for some time they had the police department there. And he, of course, produced printed collections of music, but also made recordings on the cylinder system, which had come in around the turn of that century. So it's possible to listen to the handful of cylinders that survived and get a sense of what people sounded like back then. And also, it helps to confirm that what was written down in his collections actually corresponded to what was being played. The biggest group of these cylinders was actually discovered in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, a few years ago. This was a group of cylinders that O'Neill had given to a fireman friend of his in Wisconsin. After O'Neill's son Rogers died, they took their mourning very seriously, and his wife would have no music in the house. So he gave away these cylinders, and they were thought to have been lost during World War II. But nope, they turned up. And they were issued on a CD, as a matter of fact, and you can listen to some of the famous contributors to the O'Neill collection.
That's for you, played by Patrick Louis, while Alice the Brothers.
And you can compare the recordings to what was written down in the book, and discover that Captain O'Neill's assistant, James O'Neill, fiddle player, was very accurate in his notation. So we know that they played music that's pretty much the same sort of thing that is now being played.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not really until the dawn of modern recordings that we get a better handle on it, and that's when the center of gravity shifts to New York, because that was the headquarters of most of the recording industry at the time.
Who was the first Irish musician to make a commercial recording?
Well, you could say John Kimmel, who was a great accordion player, although of a style that's not quite in sync with what is played these days, more like what is played in Quebec. And he was not of Irish ancestry, but he played Irish music in bars, and he was on the cylinders. There was a handful of people that recorded on cylinders. a lot of people give credit to a recording that was made in New York by an accordion player named Eddie Herborn, who had a
Hmm.
banjo player strumming along with him. The name of the woman who founded the recording company, Ellen O'Byrne DeWitt. That's it. She had seen Herborn and his friend Wheeler, the banjo player, playing music outside an Irish sports facility in Queens, and
Hmm.
realized that there was a possible market for this, and approached the bigger recording companies that said, well, okay, if you pay for the recordings, we'll give you some. And it turned out to be a good investment and the start of an amazing number of wonderful recordings made in the 1920s and 30s that preserved Irish music as it was played then. The songs that were recorded in that era don't have much to do with, hardcore traditional music. They were not interested in recording Irish language song or long ballads. It was more of the pop Irish music of the day. But the dance music by the people like Michael Coleman and James Morrison and Patsy Tui, all the greats of that time, I don't think that it can be equal to this day for its vibrancy and accomplishment. Yeah. I'm a real fan of that stuff.
There were also other equally good fiddle players in New York at the early part of the 20th century.
Of course. I mean, there's people that we don't know very much about because they made only one or two recordings. Some of these were included by ITMA on the From the Bridge exhibit. If you troll through what's available on the site, it's a wonderful storehouse of recordings. I'd credit particularly Alan Morrisroe, an accordion player from Mayo who lives in Dublin. He came up with a wonderful uh, group of 78 RPM recording.
There were other musicians. There were flute players.
Oh, of course. The most famous flute player would be John McKenna, who was from Leitrim, and had a very a rhythmic style that people from the northern flute tradition would embrace, I'm sure. But there were others. Tom Morrison was a great flute player, and one of his distinctions was to partner with a bowron player named John Reynolds. And I think it's the first recording of Irish traditional music with a bowron.
As someone with an affinity to Albany, both of us, we can't let the occasion pass without mentioning the Flanagan brothers.
Of course, in the early days of the recording industry, um, it helped to have an instrument that was very loud. The earliest version of the 78 RPM records were recorded in a pretty primitive process where if the instrument wasn't loud enough, it didn't make enough of an impression to cut a good groove. So the fiddle players in that period would be given by the recording house an instrument called a Stroh violin, which was a violin without a wooden sound box. Instead, there was a little diaphragm out of which a horn, like the horn of an old Victrola, would be pointed up. And they'd have to learn how to play on this heavy Stroh violin and point the horn at the recording device. So in that period, when volume counted for a great deal, the Flanagans had the perfect combination. Very loud one-row button accordion or two-row button accordion in the end, and a tenor banjo.
Molly dear, and did you hear the news that's going around? Down in the corner of me heart, a loving place you found. And every time I gaze into your Irish eyes of blue, they seem to whisper, darling boy, my love is all for you. Molly, my Irish Molly, my sweet Acushla I'm fairly off my trolley, my Irish Molly, when you are near. Springtime, you know is springtime. Come dear, don't be so slow. Change your name, go on the game, Bigara, and I'll do the same, my Irish Molly, oh. flat. 3 little cozy rooms with bath, with welcome and a mat. It's £5 down and 2 a week, I'll soon be out of debt. It's all complete except they haven't brought the cradle yet. Oh, Molly, my Irish Molly, my sweet Acushla dear, I'm fairly off my trolley, my Irish Molly, when you are near. Springtime, you know, is ring time. Come, dear, don't be so slow. Change your name, go on, big game, big arrow, and I'll do the same, my Irish Molly, oh. Molly dear, and did you hear what all the neighbors say about the 100 sovereigns you got safely stowed away? They say that's why I love you, but Molly, it's a shame. If you'd got only 99, I'd love you just the same. Oh, Molly, my Irish Molly, my sweet Acushla dear, I'm fairly off my trolley, my Irish Molly, when you are near. Springtime, you know, is ring time. Come, dear, don't be so slow. Change your name, go on, big game, big arrow, and I'll do the same, my Irish Molly, oh.
Mike Flanagan was the pioneer of Irish tenor banjo playing, and really a pioneer. Yeah.
Mike passed away as recently as the 70s. Is that right?
Yeah, I forget the exact date, but he lived long enough to meet the traditional music revivalists who had heard his recordings and hadn't even realized he was still alive. So Mick Maloney, for example, the great banjo player, went up to Albany and was thrilled to be able to meet Mike Flanagan, play some tunes with him, and put out a recording of some reissuing some of his hits from the 1920s and 30s.
I'm very proud to say that I met Mike myself when I lived in Albany. Some of his family members brought me around to meet him, and I really enjoyed chatting to him, or listening to him rather than chatting to him. And he was a lovely man, very generous man with his information and his time. The Flanagans, though, were based in New York before Mike moved to Albany. Is that correct?
Yes, during the height of their recording career, they were based in New York City. The family had come from Waterford, and not originally directly to New York City, but that was where the audience was and where the possibility of making a few dollars on the music was. I might point out that even the most renowned of the artists who made Irish traditional music recordings on 78.
Thank you to our guest today, Don Mead. We'll continue this fascinating conversation with Don in future podcasts. Join us next time as we explore more from the golden eras of Irish traditional music. Let me leave you with a joke from my recently published Cobblestone book of Irish traditional music jokes. What's the difference between a barron player and God? God doesn't think he's a barron player. Slán go foill, and mind the dresser.